we're talking about the classification of typefaces. So I will start with serif. Serif typefaces include a slight projection, finishes on strokes of its letter. So this is actually what serif font means. So the edge of a serif font has strokes of letters, strokes at the edge of its letter, strokes at the edge of the letter. That's how we can identify serif fonts. Those strokes are actually called serifs. So with serif fonts, we can actually understand one part of text, which basically are number one. Let's work with this one and see. One, diagonal stress. So the thinnest part of particular character of a particular letter, the thinnest part of a particular letter is a diagonal stress facing each other. The thinnest part of a particular letter that is facing each other most times can be found in letters like the O, letters like the E and all of that, and the D too. As long as they are facing each other diagonally, it's called diagonal stress. And bracket serif, we have bracket serif, which is the number 2. The bracket serif are those serif with curves at their edges. Yeah. With curves at their edges. So we have number 3 talks about minimum contrast. So the minimum contrast is actually talking about the thickness of the one of the character or the thickest side of the letter compared to the thinnest part of the letter. So we'll talk about contrast, and we know contrast is just to show differences. So we should know that with that number 3 what contrast actually means. Then number 4, we have wedge safe serif, which will not take much of the time because we still have a lot of classifications to talk about. So 5, angle head serif, and 6, old style serif generally include Adobe Jersey, Gerardon, Gaudi old styles, and so many more styles of serif that we can find. We have so many more styles of serif. We know that every typeface that has special characters or ornamentations at the edges of their letter are called serif. So this is a perfect example of serif also here. This is a perfect example of serif. We have different serif fonts. I'm trying to pick out a serif font aside what I've used. Try to pick out a serif font. Okay, this is a perfect example now of the serif fonts to include now. That's the Gaudi that we are talking about. So let's move on to the next one, sans serif font. Sans serif fonts are those fonts that does not have the ornamentations at the edge of each of their letters. Let's take it that way, because we can practically say sans serif are the opposite of serif font. So sans serif fonts don't have ornamentations or strokes at their edges, while serif font has strokes at the edges. That's how we can actually identify serifs and sans serif font. So sans means no serif, and serif means ornamentations or strokes at the edge of letters. So now, these also have parts of a sans serif font. The number 1 talks about the spot uppercase G, 2, minimal contrast on the strokes. The other one has maximum contrast. That's the serif has maximum contrast on the strokes. That's one way we can differentiate them. So some of the curves were more squared, and also a double story lowercase G, as we can see on the number 4, and few examples of these are Franklin Gothic, News Gothic. So like my favorite font, my favorite typeface, the Novera and all of that, they are sans serif font. So let's move on to the next one, script font. Script typeface rather. Script typeface are based on the fluid strokes of handwriting. I can range from formal to very casual. They are suitable for they are suitable for display use. They are suitable for display use. So as you all know, most times script fonts are script typeface. Like as you all know, I've already said we use typefaces and fonts interchangeably, but don't get it confused because they are actually not the same thing. Typeface is a design, then while font is actually the design with the special characters like the bold and all of that. So now we can call this a font now, but the design is actually that of a script font. So now, or we script typeface. So they are suitable for display use. So now, what script typeface are being used for most times is for display, and they are not always much in a particular design. We don't see them in a particular design for all because of um, legibility and readability when it comes to design consumption. So we don't see them. Why? Because when they become so much, they become very difficult or very hard to read. So it's just better you make them as less as possible in the design. So we don't keep a lot of script fonts in the design. So what we basically use script font for is most times for headings and not for things that will be legible, not for write-ups that will be legible or that will contain so much detailed information or so much information. So you only use script fonts for heading most times, or you use script fonts to just emphasize something very large, and the characters and the use will not be so much. It can be just one line in one line of a particular design, and it will be for emphasis sake. And also, um, type serif fonts. Serif fonts are categorized or identified as old style or old fashioned typefaces. Why? Because we can see them that they are actually typefaces that were used in most of our novels those days, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and all of that. So they are old fonts. They are the oldest fonts that we can ever see in this category of typefaces. They are the oldest typefaces that we can ever see in this category of typefaces. So most people see them old fashioned. So every typeface has their meaning, and we can actually associate their history with their meaning. So a perfect example is serif being an old fashioned typeface. So whenever you're doing a design that looks a design that talks about the past, or a design that talks about old fashioned or something, we should tend to or welcome or adopt serif typefaces. So because they are old fashions, their old fashioned does not basically mean they are outdated or cannot be used. They are actually outdated fonts. But I'm not talking about serif fonts now. We have outdated fonts, which I will get down to that part of discussion. But serif fonts generally are old fashioned, and most times whenever, like just like in colors, every color has their meaning. Serif fonts has a meaning. So every serif, every typeface has a reason they were being produced, has a story behind it most times, because all designs are creative with a particular concept. So, and as we all know that typefaces are designs of text. So we should definitely know that there is a meaning a particular text is communicating. So the meaning can be attached to the history of the typeface, which I just said now that serif fonts, serif typefaces are typefaces that are old fashioned. So, which makes them equivalent to something or typefaces that can be used for official designs, memorandum, and all the rest. Memorandums, whichever designs that talks about formal presentation. So, and for sans serif fonts, sans serif fonts, it is sans serif typefaces. Sans serif typefaces are typefaces that are modern. Like I said, they are the opposite of what we have in serif. They are modern, and most times they are being used for headings. They're being used for headings and subheadings, and you can also use them for body copy. Body copy is the content, is the most voluminous content, the voluminous part of a particular design composition, where we have the main information and the paragraphs and every other thing. While headings, we all know, as the name implies, is the top side or the most or the side with the emphasis, the section that has the most emphasis. So sans serif are also formal, and they can be at times casual too, but most times they are being used for formal presentations too. They are modern, as we know. Sans serif font too, serif typefaces too can be used as headers. So, and they can also be used as body copy. But I've studied that these days most designers don't really use it for presentations or designs that will be displayed on the screen because serif fonts being on the screen might be difficult to read at times. They are legible typefaces, but they are difficult to read at times because of the tiny strokes whenever you use them for body copies. So it's advisable we use them most times for print or leave them as heading part. So whenever they are being printed, they are easy to read compared to leaving it on the screen as body copies. That is a tip that we should just keep in mind, bear in mind. So now, script typefaces I've explained, they are basically used for display. They should not be so much just a particular emphasis display. And as you know, you cannot have more than one emphasis in the design. Emphasis means most important. So you cannot have two most important in the design. So let's know that. Also, we have this is a perfect example, and the parts where they have floral edges most times, flowing loops and flourishes for one letter forms that are generally connected. That's, as we know, handwritings, families of them are handwritings and scripts, yeah, and all of that. So we also have monospace. Monospace typefaces are non-proportional. Every letter takes up the same amount of horizontal space on the page or screen. They are serif and sans serif. So monospace typefaces are characterized by the same width, the same letter width. Each letter has the same width. Each letter has the same width perfectly. So there is actually an issue here because majority of serif and sans serif fonts are monospaced, but not all. So let's take note of that. Let's take note of that because there are some letters that are not almost the same width because of their scale and all of that. There are some letters that are not almost the same width in serif and sans serif, which we cannot associate them with monospace, but majority of sans serif and serif has the same width for each of the letters. So now, so this category of typefaces that has the same width for their letters, they are called monospace. So they also take some basic functions of or some basic usage of the serif and sans serif. And as we know that sans serif are modern compared to serif typefaces. So, and finally, we'll talk about display font. I've actually mentioned that um, script typefaces are used for display. We also have a category classification of typeface that is also called display typeface. So a display typeface is a display typeface vary widely in their appearance. The appearance is dependent is how would I call it is abstract most time. Most times there are some that have specific appearance that we've seen in our everyday life and include both practical and novelty fonts suitable for headings and titles. We have a lot of them as a perfect example, and most of them are outdated. I said I will say one or two things about outdated font. We should learn not to use outdated font or outdated typefaces in designs. It makes our design looks out of looks vague. Make it look out of being in vogue or something. So it's better we try to make research and get to know trending typefaces, update our libraries of typefaces, and make sure after installing you practice and see how best you can use them. And the usage of typefaces also also can be channeled through the principles of design, because like I was mentioning in some of the previous videos that okay we can talk about contrasts with typefaces. I was giving instance the shapes, giving instance with typefaces with text and all of that. So all of this contrast, balance and all of that, it is also good to try to relate most of design principles with typefaces. It will help you show how professional, to help you reflect that you know what you're doing. So I'll give some examples of typefaces that are not really interesting, that are old fashioned. Let's try see copper black. So this is a display font or display typeface, and it's definitely outdated. Typeface like this being outdated used on design will make your design look, I don't even know the perfect name to associate a design that has this type of type. This typeface has been overused. The problem is they've actually not been so old like serif typeface, but the rate at which it has been used, it has made them look outdated. So we should also learn one or two things, that whenever we are trying to design anything, we should try to use typefaces that will look unique, that will look different, look very unique, different from what is common. What is common? You can use what is trending, but what is trending might not definitely be what is common. So that's what we should know. A particular typeface might be trending, maybe it's being used and it's blending well with work, but with time, over time, it gets outdated because of the overused way. So let's just take note of that. I think we also have another that I can actually display. Let's see, Algerian. Okay, this is also a perfect example. Algerian. This is a perfect example of one of the outdated. So let's just we know everybody almost know that this particular typeface is common. People use it over again. So we can also see one again. Let's see, joke man. Yeah, this is also a common one that has trended and trended and trended and trended, and it has been overused. So let us know that I want us to know that we should do well to make research, check typefaces that are trending, new typefaces that are out that can be used. They are beautiful typefaces. And during the course of the end of the or during the end of the class, I will also show us or tell us more about how to source out for typefaces and install on our PC and use. So I will try to give some few or some basic guidelines in the usage of typefaces to make them look interesting in our design. So let's get started. So let's create a new